I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist, and here I share legal and entertainment news from a psychological perspective. Thank you to the psych nerd that commented that this video by Bruce Rivers was available. I am not going to play this video. A lot of people in the community are aware that Bruce Rivers lost his son, Michael, back in November of last year, and he really hadn't put any new content out since then. And I didn't know if he was gonna come back, because his son was such a huge part of his stream, and if you do go and watch the video, please have your tissues, like, because, Bruce Rivers goes through his favorite memories of his son, and he also shares graphic details of finding his son after an overdose. And towards the end of the video, it really broke my heart that there were comments on prior videos before he did this one of people blaming the family and saying things like that. And addiction is incredibly hard. And it sounds like Michael, from at least around teenage years, that his ongoing struggle with substance addiction was pretty chronic, and he would likely have periods of sobriety and then would relapse. And relapse within addiction literature, within research, within treatment, relapse is often considered a part of the cycle. Like, it is something that can happen. And I think there can be this judgment of people that they're not trying hard enough, or they don't want it enough, or that the family wasn't there enough. And I think, especially hearing just some of the details of their lives, because Bruce Rivers did publicly share that that Michael's mom had uh, died by suicide. I think he said 22 years ago, and that type of traumatic loss for a child, it can create this lifelong struggle with prolonged grief. And substances can sometimes be a way that people try to cope with pain. And, because Bruce Rivers, he was incredibly open and honest about, "Hey, these were the pills, or these were the drugs that were found in his system. These are the issues that we were having behind closed doors." And it really seemed like, his son Michael had been in and out of treatment, and it really did sound like they had done everything that they could do. And, and and I also, because when I first heard about his death, I wasn't sure if if there was any intent to die. And, I do not know him, I do not know their case. It sounds like it was an accidental overdose. It does sound like that was not the intention. And that's where substance abuse can be a bit tricky, because the user, the person that has that mental health, that struggle, they can be at risk of dying unexpectedly. And the harm that happens to the family is just so catastrophic. I have worked with children who have lost parents. I have worked with parents that have lost children. I have also worked with polysubstance abusers that have histories of chronic trauma. And something that they often had to do was identify what's their substance of choice, and then what are the things that they need to stay away from. So there are some people that their substance of choice might be, and so there are going to be trigger warnings for substances in this, okay? So for someone, their substance of choice might be heroin, but if they smoke cannabis, that can be a trigger to getting down to some harder things if they are trying to be sober. So there are some people in their sobriety where they don't use alcohol, they don't use any substances at all. I think Bruce Rivers, I think his regular style is pretty blunt. And with somebody that has a history of narcotics addiction, your family being upfront with you and being really matter of fact, sometimes that's more helpful. I find the AA community to be, and this is just my general, like outside looking in, and having clients that have done AA versus Narcotics Anonymous NA. And then there's also support for families. There is Al Anon, and that's for family members of people that are alcoholics. And then sometimes there are some other groups that are similar to that, that can help educate the families on how to support. If you do have a family member that goes to rehab, making sure that there's some family therapy, that there are some family components, and that information is given on how to adjust the home environment, that can be really, really helpful. And so it was the video by Bruce Rivers. I cannot. It was so touching, so heartbreak. Like, it was very, very powerful. And so I wanted to use that to springboard. How can families support a child through their addiction? And this website, and I think this is trying to promote a specific treatment facility. I am not endorsing this specific facility. This was just general information that I thought could be helpful. And I do put all of my links down in the description. Um, and so one of the first steps for families is to understand their child's addiction. That addiction, while chronic, it can also be treatable. And sometimes there can be compulsive and ongoing drug seeking and using behaviors, despite the serious negative consequences, where a person can have car accidents, they can have DUIs, they can have, like, they can have all of these negative consequences, and they can lose a job, they can lose money, and they still struggle with their sobriety. People sometimes mistakenly believe that someone who is struggling with substance abuse should be able to just stop using it by willpower alone. And that is often not the case. The brain changes that happen during substance use and abuse can make it challenging. And for some substances, it can be dangerous for someone to just quit without proper help. Um, Knowing the early signs of a substance use can be really helpful, including frequent or sudden changes in friends, withdrawing from friends and family, being so, like, kind of disappearing for months or days or weeks at a time, sleeping more or less than usual, lack of self control and motivation. And some of these things can apply to other things. Like, these don't only apply to substance abuse, but these are some warning signs. Poor grooming and self care. I would also add changes in weight loss, so significant weight loss, um, uh, stealing, and then secretive behavior. And so, how do you end up talking to someone about their addiction? And really trying to pick a time when they're quiet, when they're calm and sober, and avoiding confrontational interventions can be helpful, and trying to be direct, loving, and non-judgmental, and trying to listen and show empathy. And this resource has a video, um, a series on how to talk to family members with addiction. And once again, this link is down in the description. And so, if someone does need rehab, if someone does need to go away to treatment, sometimes right before a person is about to go into treatment, sometimes that can be one of the most dangerous times for them. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes they will escalate their substance use right before they know that they're about to go into treatment. And so that's why sometimes the treatment facilities, they will kind of, if the person is willingly going, sometimes they don't always notify them of when their admission date is, or they try to get them admitted as soon as possible because there can be a high risk for overdose when the person is about to go. Because and part of it is that fear of missing out, thinking, I know that when I come out, I'm not going to be able to use this substance or these substances anymore, and they might overdo it. Another tricky time for people that have histories of substance use or abuse is after a period of sobriety. If they go back to using, but their body isn't used to the substance anymore, sometimes they might use the amount that they used to use after years of use, but they've been clean, they've been sober for 3, 4, 5, 10 years. And so if they go back to that higher amount, that can also increase risk uh, of overdose. And overdose is taking more. Some people survive overdoses. So overdose medically is often referred to taking, like, so a person sometimes losing consciousness, take like them having a really negative reaction to a substance. Sometimes with prescription pills, it's taking more than prescribed. So taking more than the prescribed dose, and people can, of course, die from an overdose. I do keep, so I have the Narcan. So with the opioid epidemic and with issues with opioids, I do have Narcan in my office, and our community offered free so Narcan, what it is it's for, it's almost like an EpiPen for opioids. So what opioids do is they block oxygen receptor, like the biology of it is that it reduces oxygen. That's what too many opioids do. And the Narcan, it blocks those receptors so that the brain and the body can function like it normally does. People, if you ever use Narcan on someone, they are not going to be happy because they are going to be jolted out of. And this is I've never had to administer it to someone. In the training, they informed us that, like, it's not a pleasant experience for the person being rescued, but it's necessary because they can die from an overdose of opioids. And so I like to share this general information with you all, especially after, a prominent member of the law tube community had this type of loss, because families can often feel overwhelmed and helpless and not know what to do. And I've worked with people that had a adult child, and we were doing individual therapy to help them support their child that was in the midst of their treatment. Because it does have an impact on the family. It can be incredibly scary, and it can really just bring up a lot for everyone involved. And so that's where sometimes, if I've had referrals for people where a part of why they were coming for their own work is because they were supporting an adult child with substance issues. All right. Let me make myself smaller, and all right. And so, sometimes payment can be an issue because rehab facilities can be expensive. And so, people often have to take a look at the financial costs. Sometimes there are, other options available. So there is intensive outpatient. So intensive outpatient treatment, the person goes to, um, often sometimes it's a hospital, sometimes it's a treatment center, but they go for 3 to 5 days a week. sometimes for anywhere from 4 to 8 hours a day. And they receive group therapy, individual therapy, sometimes medication management. And so intensive outpatient is sometimes an option. Sometimes in those programs, they often have regular drug screening as well. Those sometimes people are court ordered to those intensive outpatient programs. Sometimes people elect to do those on their own. And there are other mental health conditions where people can go to intensive outpatient, but substance use and abuse, like that is one of the options. For some people, outpatient treatment is more than enough. Sometimes outpatient treatment, along with other supports in their family, in their community, sometimes that's enough. Sometimes people do need to go into a facility so that they don't have access to the goal is that they don't have access to substances and all of that. Of course, in treatment centers, there can be, people trying to sell, or there can be some access still, but the goal is that they don't have that access. It can be hard for people to have to cut off certain friends that maybe aren't in sobriety. So to have to change their social network, because if they're trying to be sober and to not use, and their friends still are, that can be triggering. And the friends can sometimes be like, "Oh no," like be very supportive of them and know that they're not trying to use, but just being around somebody else that's using can often be a trigger. Yep. All right. And so let's see. And so this just has information about what to expect in rehab, and then how to help yourself deal with your child's addiction. Because one of the things I want to make sure is that I'm not enabling my child's behavior, and then also that I'm not isolating myself from them. And then it really can break trust, and how we build that trust back, and then knowing that there might be a time that the substance takes over again, and I might not be able to trust my child like maybe I could in the past. Okay, so trigger warnings for loss, we now want to switch over to talk about helping yourself heal when someone you care about dies of a drug overdose. Okay. I also have this link down in the description as well. And there is grief, and then there is traumatic grief. And there is a stigma that can come with addiction, with an overdose, where um, sometimes people can say very hurtful things, or sometimes there can be this judgment. When I've worked with children that have lost a family member from a drug overdose, especially a parent, because sometimes other kids will ask, "How did your parent die?" Sometimes we talk about, without, if it's not a close friend, maybe they just say the person was sick, that they don't really go into those details, because too much information in the wrong hands, especially in middle school or high school, can lead to rumors. It can lead to that information being used against them in the past. But in our sessions, I make sure that they know I don't judge their parent. Sometimes the child will feel like, or the family will feel that the individual cared about the substances more than their family, and that is what addiction can do. Um, and I don't and once again, because I try to take that non-judgmental approach where we're trying to help the person. We're trying to help them find other ways to cope with their pain. Sometimes substance addiction, it's masking or it's treating bipolar disorder or depression or anxiety or grief or trauma. Sometimes a person is trying to cope with their pain, and a part of relapse prevention and a part of reducing harm is addressing that pain. Because if you take away the substances without addressing what's causing the pain, the individual will just kind of pick a new addiction. Like, it might turn to food, or it might turn to electronics, or they may pick up some other unhealthy way of coping. And so that's why we really want to get to the root and address whatever that pain is. All right. I mentioned before that when someone you love dies an overdose, it's a complicated grief. It's not a typical grief, and there can be anger. There can often be anger, and more anger because the parent, the child, whoever is coping and grieving, um, they're often mad at the other person, and uh and that can also go into the individuals that gave them the drugs, or the friends that knew they were using and didn't say anything, or sometimes it can kind of explode. And I've seen, I think, did I attend um I know someone that lost a family member due to an overdose, and there were multiple people that entered rehab, like, after attending the funeral, or, like, right around the time of that individual's death. And the way that the family kind of coped is they ended up giving a, scholarship for treatment, or they donate money instead of giving flowers. They recommended giving funds to help, support and educate young people that are at risk for using. And so, all right, when a person so there are some additional tips for mourning the death, and making sure that the person is taking good care of themselves, trying to rest, eat healthy, drink, because it can often be hard to continue going on. And it can also be hard to explain it to children. And finding the age appropriate language of how to explain it to the child. Sometimes the children are aware that of the individual's issues with substances. And so people might have thought, oh, the kids don't, but the kids knew. They didn't know exactly what substances, but the kids were aware that something was going on. All right. I also have another, it's a if just in case the link doesn't work, if you copy it, it should open this PDF, because at the bottom of this one, there are some additional resources too. And I liked how this one talked about the sadness, the anger, the feelings of guilt. Sometimes there can be this shame that comes up, and there can be this isolation and loneliness. There can also be a sense of relief that comes up for the family member, that they no longer have to wait for terrible news. Because for somebody that's in active, like, everybody is aware, there have been multiple relapses, there have been multiple overdoses that they've been able to, be hospitalized after, or get the appropriate medical care. Sometimes there can be this mixed feeling of relief that can bring up shame or guilt, that there's this secret, almost not happiness, but this just, I don't have to worry about them anymore, which can really bring up a lot for the individual. There can be frustration, and once again, we talked about that stigma and the fear and the anxiety. All right. And so this one has some tools of what can help. And then there is grief recovery after substance abuse passing. So this is grasphelp.org. There's also International Overdose Awareness Day, and then survivorresources.org. And then there are also a few books of individuals that have lost individuals this way. All right. And so um, this was a difficult topic. And just in honor of Bruce Rivers, his son Michael, I'm was so thrilled to hear that Bruce Rivers is going to continue his channel. He has new editors. He's going to continue creating content because I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to. Um, just because I know there will be so many memories. I do think his son Michael would have wanted him to, and Bruce Rivers also mentioned that he might sell some of his son's artwork. And his son Michael also has a sister, and that the family is coping, that they are managing. And so please check out, I once again I said I have Bruce Rivers full video down in the description. If you haven't seen it, it was, and then trigger warning because he describes in detail finding his son, which is traumatic. Finding his son deceased. And so and he gives a few graphic details, and I just can't imagine. And he said the thing that I've heard parents say, that child loss is, it's a different kind of loss. And uh um that memory video, him showing the baby pictures and talking about all the things that his son loved, and letting him live on, through the art and through all of those things. I truly wish them all the best. It was so, so touching. And, and once again, it broke my heart that people were trying to blame the family. And families can do everything. They can do everything, quote, unquote, "right," and the individuals still die of an overdose, because that is, addiction is hard. And uh a person can go through the treatment, can go through all of these things, and still have a relapse and not even intend to die. But there can be those accidental overdoses. And so I don't know the family. um I truly believe that, based on everything I heard Bruce Rivers say in the video, because he talked about the treatment centers and the hospitalizations and all the things that they tried to do to support Michael, it really did seem like they did everything that they could have done. And so people should be kind. People should know that, like, creators, they really do read the comments. And it is mind-blowing to me that people would say, because even if someone was thinking something like that, like, don't put that in the comments. Like, just those opinions, people can keep that to themselves. And so I appreciate you all being here. If you want to hang out to talk about the Megan Boswell case, that video will be launching in just a few minutes. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. I will be live tomorrow, I think around I think we said 5:30. I think it's 4, my brain. I think it's 5:30. I'm going live tomorrow with Paul, from reporting live from my sofa. We are going to do a recorded podcast video, and then also we're going to do a live video together that will be over on his channel tomorrow. I will share the link to the community tab, so please, keep an eye out for that. I will, and so Eastern time, yes. So Sunday, um, around 5:30 Eastern, I believe is what we said, because we're gonna record the not live video at 4 p.m. first. And so I hope y'all have a good one. I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye.